Hello. Well, still moving on with William Saroyan's The Human Comedy, Chapter 14, Diana. Ulysses moved closer to Mr. Grogan while Augie listened to the clatter of the telegraph box. "What's that for?" Augie said to Mr. Spangler, indicating the box. "Mr. Grogan's sending a telegram," Spangler said. "Where's he sending it to?" Augie said. "New York," Spangler said. "All the way to New York?" Augie said. "How does it go?" "It goes by wire," Spangler said. "Wires on telegraph poles?" Augie said. "Telegraph poles from here to New York? All the way from Ithaca to New York?" "That's right," Spangler said. "Who sends them?" Augie said. "All sorts of people," Spangler said. The newsboy thought a moment and then said, "I never got a telegram in my life. How do you get one?" "Somebody sends you one," Spangler said. "I never got any," Augie said. "Who would send it?" "Some friend or somebody," Spangler said. "Everybody I know is right here in Ithaca," Augie said. A green light went on the repeater rack. "What's that green light for?" Augie said. "It's a signal to us that the line is clear," Spangler said. "What line?" Augie said. "The line to San Francisco," Spangler said. "Oh!" Augie said. "How old do you have to be a messenger?" 16, Spangler said. "I'm 9, Augie said. Why do you have to do to wait so long for? You can enlist in the Navy when you're 17. "It's a rule," Spangler said. "What have they got all them rules for all the time?" Augie said. Spangler began to file a batch of outgoing telegrams into a block of pigeonholes. "Well," he said, "that rule is to keep children from working." "Why?" Augie said. "So they won't get tired," Spangler said, "so they can play. That rule is for the protection of children." "Protection from what?" Augie said. "Well," Spangler said, "protection from hard work, I guess. Protection from bosses who make kids do too much work for the work they're paid." "Well, what if the kid doesn't want to be protected?" Augie said. "What if he wants to work?" "Well, they protect him anyway," Spangler said. "How old do you have to be not to be a child anymore?" Augie said. "How old do you have to be able to protect yourself or to do any kind of work you want to do?" "Gotta be 16 to be a messenger," Spangler said. "Homer's working, isn't he?" Augie said. "Since when is Homer 16? "Well," Spangler said, "Homer is an exception. He's only 14, but he's strong and he's intelligent." "What do you mean intelligent?" Augie said. "Do you have to be intelligent to be a messenger?" "No," Spangler said, "but it helps. It helps to be intelligent no matter what you are." "Well," Augie said, "how can you tell if a man's intelligent?" Spangler looked at the newsboy and smiled. "By talking to him a few minutes," he said. "What are you putting those papers in there for?" Augie said. "These are telegrams that were sent yesterday," Spangler said. "We file them in here, city by city, for our records and our bookkeeping. Now, this telegram is to go to San Francisco, so I put it here. All these telegrams in here are to San Francisco." "I can do that," Augie said. "I can ride a bike too, only I haven't got a bike. But if I get a bike, Mr. Spangler, can I be a messenger too? Will you give me a job?" Spangler stopped working to look at the boy. "Yes, I will, Augie, but not just yet. 9 is not quite old enough. 13 or 14, yes." 12, maybe? Augie said. "Maybe," Spangler said. "What do you want to be a messenger for?" "Learn things," Augie said. "Read telegrams, find out things." He paused a moment. "I won't be 12 for 3 years." "3 years will go by in no time at all," Spangler said. "Doesn't seem like it," Augie said. "I've been waiting a long time already." "You'll find out," Spangler said. "You'll be 12 before you know it. What's your last name?" "Gottlieb," Augie said. "August Gottlieb." The manager of the telegraph office and the newsboy looked at each other, each of them very earnest and very serious. "August Gottlieb," Spangler said. "I give you my word, when the time comes." Spangler stopped speaking to behold a young woman named Diana Steed galloping into the office. In front of the office in the street was the automobile which had brought her. At the wheel of the automobile sat a chauffeur in uniform. In a special, somewhat artificial yet attractive voice, she cried out to Spangler, "Oh, there you are, darling!" She charged upon him with a sweet fury of affection, threw her arms around him, and kissed him in a way that was so incredible it might have been real, or a little better than real. "Wait a minute," Spangler said. He held her back, put the wire basket he was holding on the desk, and turned to her. The young woman came for him, but he warded her off. "Wait a minute," he said. "This is August Gottlieb." "How do you do, little boy?" the young woman said. "August," Mr. Spangler said, "this is Miss Steed." "Hello," Augie said, and then, not knowing what else to say, he said, "Paper lady?" "Why, yes, of course," Diana said. How much is it?" 5 cents, Augie said. "Home edition, race results, stock market closings, and the latest news of the war." "Yes," Diana said. "Here's a nickel. Thank you very much." Augie took the nickel and gave Miss Steed a paper, which he first folded in a very efficient and businesslike way, whacking the full paper on his knee, folding it in half, whacking the paper half paper on his knee, folding that in half, and then turning the result around neatly, somewhat like a magician doing an important trick. And he handed it to her. "Thank you, ma'am," he said. "Wednesdays I sell the Saturday Evening Post and Liberty. Fridays Collier's. I work the whole town." "Well," Diana said, "I hope you make a lot of money, little boy." "I average about 40 cents a day, papers and magazines both," Augie said. When the county fair opens, I sell soda pop." "Well, you do keep busy, don't you?" Diana said in her wonderful, cheerful voice. "Yes," Augie said, "and I learn things too. I can figure people out pretty good." It appeared that Augie had figured Miss Steed out and was pleased with the results. "Yes, you do," she said. "I'm sure you do." She turned to Spangler. "I waited for your call, darling." She said, "You did say you would call at 5, didn't you?" "Oh, yeah," Spangler said. "I forgot. I was talking to Augie here. He wants to be a messenger, and I've just told him when the time comes, he's going to have a job." "Well, thanks, Mr. Spangler," Augie said. He moved to go. "I'll be seeing you," he said. "Goodbye, ma'am." He turned to the little boy. "Goodbye, Ulysses," he said. "Ulysses?" Diana said to Spangler. "My, what a refreshing name. Ulysses. Ulysses in Ithaca. Darling, I've only a moment. You will be out for dinner, won't you? You must, you know." Spangler began to speak, but the young woman stopped him. "No," she said, "you promised. Yes, you did. Mother and father are dying to meet you. 7 o'clock sharp." "Now, wait a minute," Spangler said. "Wait a minute." "Darling," Diana said, "you can't disappoint me again, can you?" "Nothing in the world is ever going to disappoint you," Spangler said, "so take it easy. 7 o'clock sharp? What do you mean sharp? What do you want me to come to dinner for?" "Because I love you, darling," the young woman said very patiently, as if Spangler were a child. "I love you, love you, love you. Do you hear?" she said, laughing cheerfully. "Now, take it easy," the manager of the telegraph office said. "Every time you come out with that kind of talk, But I do love you, darling," the young woman said earnestly. Spangler sighed. "I've been out to dinner twice in my life," he said. "I was bored both times." "You'll like Mother and Father," Diana said. "We're not dressing, just evening clothes." "What do you mean, evening clothes?" Spangler said. "I'm wearing the clothes I wear day and evening both." 7 o'clock, Diana said. She noticed the hard-boiled egg on Spangler's desk. "Oh, darling," she said, "what a clever paperweight. What is it?" "It's an egg," Spangler said. "A real egg. I keep it for luck." "How sweet," Diana said. "Well, darling, I've got to run." She moved toward him for a farewell kiss, but he warded her off gently, and she left the office. Mr. Grogan finished typing up a telegram. Spangler led Ulysses over to the old man. "Willie," he said, "I'm going over to Corbett's for a drink. This is Ulysses Macaulay, Homer's little brother. He's had an experience of some sort, got caught in some kind of trap. Ulysses, this is Mr. Willie Grogan." Oh, we're old friends, Mr. Grogan said. He's been watching me work. Ulysses nodded. One drink, and I'll be right back, Spangler said. Chapter 15. The Girl on the Corner. First I must persist responsibly. Thank you for your patience. Chapter 15. The Girl on the Corner. Spangler turned to go, but he was stopped by the work of the call box, by the message which simultaneously rang out and printed itself upon the ticker tape. He went to the instrument on the delivery desk and studied the marks on the tape. That's a call from Ithaca Wine, he said to Grogan, way out in the sticks. If Homer comes in, keep him here until we get the regular evening call from Sunripe Raisin. He's beat Western Union there twice in 2 tries. If he can make it again today, we may have a pretty good month of business after all. How many did we get today? How many did we get yesterday? 67, Grogan said. 67 telegrams out of 68, Spangler said. First boy there gets all the telegrams but 1. Second boy gets 1. Well, I'll go get that drink. But now another call began to come in. ... When the manager of the telegraph office had heard only the first 2 dots, he knew the call was from Sunripe Raisin. And as Homer was not in the office to take the call, he shouted to Grogan, I'll take the call, I'll get there first myself. By the time the call was repeated 3 times, Spangler was in the middle of the next block, moving through the people like an open field runner in a football game. On the corner before him, 30 yards away, stood a shy, lonely-looking girl of 18 or 19, tired, sweet, hushed, and wonderful. She was waiting for a bus to take her home after work. Even though he was running, it was impossible for Spangler not to notice the girl's loneliness, which seemed to him, even though he was in a hurry, like the loneliness of all things. Not clowning, with any premeditation, swiftly and easily, he reached the girl, paused a moment, and kissed her on the cheek. Before he moved on, he told the girl the only thing it was possible to say to her. You are the loveliest woman in the world. He ran on. When he was going up the steps of the Sunripe Raisin Association 3 at a time, the Western Union messenger, off to a slow start because the delivery clerk did not know the calls by heart as Spangler did, was just getting off his bicycle in front of the building. And when Spangler was going into the office, the Western Union messenger had only begun to wait for the elevator. As if he were still a messenger, Spangler announced himself to the old woman at the desk of Sunripe Raisin. Postal telegraph, he said. Tom, the old woman said, pleased and surprised. Don't tell me you're a messenger now, too. Once a messenger, always a messenger, Spangler said, not at all embarrassed by the meaninglessness of the remark. He smiled at the old woman and then said, But most of all I came to see you, Mrs. Brockington. The Western Union messenger came into the office. Western Union, he said. Well, Harry, Mrs. Brockington said, you've been beaten again. She handed the messenger one telegram. Better luck next time, she said. The Western Union boy, a little confused and embarrassed because he had been beaten again, this time not by another messenger, but by the manager of the Postal Telegraph Office, took the one telegram and said, Thanks just the same, Mrs. Brockington, and left the office. The old woman handed Spangler a whole bundle of telegrams. Here you are, Tom, she said, 129 night letters, all over the country, all paid. 129, Spangler said. That's going to give me a good month of business after all. He leaned over the railing and kissed the old woman. Now, Tom, Mrs. Brockington said. No, Mr. Spangler said, you mustn't be unkind to me. I've been wanting to kiss you ever since I first came in here and saw you. Remember? 20 years. And you've become more beautiful every year. Now, Tom, the old woman said, don't you be teasing an old woman. Old? Spangler said, not you. You're sweet, Tom, Mrs. Brockington said, and so were all your messengers. But where's the new one? Homer? Spangler said, you mean Homer Macaulay? You'll be seeing him every day. First, too. We got slowed down this afternoon on account of an accident that happened to his little brother, a little boy named Ulysses. Got caught in some kind of a trap at Covington's. Homer had to go and get him out, but you'll be seeing him from now on." He stopped and smiled at the old woman. "Good night, Emily," he said. "How sweet of you to remember my name," the old woman said. In the street he felt very good. About everything. About Homer getting Ulysses out of the trap. About Grogan being able to do his work even though he had long since passed the pension age. About Ulysses standing around being fascinated by everything in the telegraph office. About Augie wanting to grow up swiftly and be a messenger. About Diana Steed, even. But most of all, he felt happy about the girl who had been waiting for the bus on the street corner. When he reached the place where the girl had stood, he paused a moment. He said to himself, it was right here that she was standing. I'll never see her again, most likely, but even if I do, I'll never see her again as she was when I saw her this afternoon. He moved on down the street, whistling to himself. When he was across the street from Corbett's, he heard pianola music, the old waltz called "All That I Want Is You." He moved to the swinging doors of the saloon, listened a moment, and then went on in. Corbett himself was at the bar and immediately went to work, getting Spangler his regular drink, scotch and plain water. "Hello, Ralph," Spangler said. "How's it going?" He glanced over at the three soldiers listening to the player piano. "Not bad, not good," Corbett said. "Soldiers with a lot of time to kill and not very much money. I buy them 3 to their 1, and when they're broke and ready to go, I give them back their money. Why not?" "Can you afford to do that?" Spangler said. "No," Corbett said. "But what's the difference? After the war, maybe I'll get some of it back. I just can't be a bartender. I'm young Corbett." He stopped a moment to remember something that was troubling him. "Last night, Tom," he said, "I'm tending bar, trying to get along, and a wise guy calls out to me, 'Hey, Screwball, get me another drink.' He wasn't a soldier. He was somebody from Ithaca. Well, I looked around. Nobody else behind the bar, just me. 'Screwball? You talking to me?' I tell him. 'I ain't talking to myself, Screwball,' the guy says. Well, what am I going to do? I can't hit the guy because I've been in the ring. I went over to him and took him like this." Corbett took Spangler by the coat lapel with one hand, and with the other lifted high, palm open, he waited a furious moment. Then he said what he had said the night before to the bad drinker. "You're talking to young Corbett. If I slap you, you'll probably fall down and die. And I don't want anybody to die in my place. Now get out of here and don't come back. Don't ever step into this joint again as long as you live. And when you go out, be glad you're alive." Corbett let go of Spangler's coat. He was trembling with rage. "My hands were shaking all night after that," he said, "but last night wasn't the first time something like that happened. It happens almost every night. And every time it happens, I tell myself, no more. I've got to close this place. Got to get away. I'm getting scared. Some night I'm afraid I'm going to lose my head and murder somebody. Running a bar isn't an easy thing. I've got too good a heart to be a bartender." The manager of the telegraph office and the former prize fighter talked along for another 5 minutes, and then Spangler went back to the office. As he left the saloon, the soldiers had the player piano going strong. Now the song was White Blossom. The soldiers watched the words as they moved down the roll and tried to sing with the piano music. Spangler listened a moment. Their singing wasn't particularly good, but the feeling with which they sang was not bad at all. Thank you and good night.